electoral geography, gerrymandering. I put this here in this lecture having to do with borders and boundaries because really it's very similar. It's kind of in the same category, really. In the United States, we have a federal system of government. So last week we spent a little bit of time looking at unitary and federal states. We're a federal country, which means that we have a national government with a lot of strong central power that handles certain responsibilities, but then our state governments are going to handle things on a state and local level because they want to represent population. Well, one of the things that characterizes our legislature is the fact that we have two houses within our Congress, all right? And that is the Senate and the House of Representatives. So a little bit of quick history. The Senate is going to, people that wanted the Senate, they wanted every state to have equal representation. Okay, well, this right here historically would have benefited states that didn't have as many people over states with a lot of people. But then the other side of the coin was they wanted representation based on population, which would have made it so that states like Virginia is what I'm trying to think of, would have had a huge population at the time. It would have had a huge advantage in Congress. And so what we ended up agreeing with is that each state would get 2 House reps, just 2 on the surface, and then Senate reps, and then it would get House reps based on population that would also govern on a local level. So you look at your different congressional districts within your state, then you can see the areas that each representative is going to be representing, and they are voted in by the people of that particular area. Okay, so I say all that to say, politics, man. People always trying to take advantage and always trying to get, their say, even sometimes to the point of cheating because, man, if you ain't cheating, you're not playing the game, right? No one's going to win if you don't have to really work for it and cheat for it. I'm being sarcastic, but really gerrymandering is an example of cheating if I ever saw it. All right, so here's the way it looks. This here is my state. I live in South Carolina. We have 7 congressional districts, right? And this here is Maryland. And I know Maryland looks kind of small for you guys, but you've got a bunch of crazy things happening here. You can see the different colors represent different congressional districts. And what in the world is this? What in the world is district number 3? Why is it all snaked out like that? And I want to say it was maybe this district or one of the other one district in North Carolina or something. I mean, every now and again you might have a most gerrymandered district in the country where you can just look at it on the surface and say something about this isn't right. All right, what are they trying to do here by separating this congressional district in such a crazy way? But when you look at a state like South Carolina, is gerrymandering? I mean, here's a clear case, like you just now said. Right. By the way, both parties do gerrymandering. It's not just a Republican or a Democrat thing. However, you can find evidence to support possibly that Republicans do it the most. Nevertheless, both parties still do it. You can look here. I don't know the congressional breakdown of Maryland. I'm assuming that the map is correct and that there are 7 congressional districts that are Democrat and 1 that's Republican. I'm guessing that's right. I'm telling you straight up. I don't know. I haven't verified that. It's just a map. But if you look at South Carolina, is gerrymandering happening in South Carolina, or could you make a case that these are gerrymandered districts? Well, on the surface, I mean, this looks elongated, but for the most part, the congressional districts in South Carolina look pretty good on if you're just going by the map. They seem to be relatively compact. There's possibly equal population. I'm guessing that there are going to be equal populations. I haven't looked at the populations of the different congressional districts, but usually that's what they try to do. All right. But if you look a little bit deeper at other maps and other types of data points with South Carolina, you get to see a different picture. First, look at the area, the percent below federal poverty level in South Carolina. You've got a bunch of poverty in this kind of center area going straight through the state, not a little bit further out from the coast, but going straight through more or less the center of the state. Well, you look a little bit further and you say that this here is almost entirely Black in terms of your majority population is in some cases 60 or 70%. Okay, so even more than 50% in some of these different counties. All right, so now, if you look at this and you look at the fact that, well, this area is also super poor, and you start to be able to connect the dots a little bit, well, let's look at the map again. What do we see with District 6? And what do we see going on here with ethnic and economic stability in that region? Well, this is here in South Carolina, we call this area the corridor of shame. All right. And it's or sometimes the I-95 corridor. I'm sorry. I hope I'm right about that interstate. But there's actually YouTube segments and things like this. President Obama in 2008 came and campaigned in this area because it kind of is the armpit of South Carolina. And you could argue that it's not fair to the groups that live here. And when you look at District 6, obviously District 6 is Democrat, right? Now, I want to say that, let me look. This is not current. I think District 5 also, God, I might be mixed up. I think District 5 is also, no, District 1. I think it's District 1 is also has a Democrat in it now. This was in 2016. Hope I'm telling you that right. I know that there are 2 congressional districts in South Carolina that are now Democrat, but you could argue that there's some gerrymandering going on here because they've got people that are all more or less like-minded politically in one area. Blacks tend to vote Democrat. The rest of the state is not as ethnically black, far less ethnically black, according to this map, and vote Republican. So that's what I wanted you guys to see, is that gerrymandering isn't always something that's super obvious whenever you're looking on the map. You can't just always eyeball it like you can in North Carolina or like you can in Maryland. But you have to look a little bit deeper at some of the statistics. We're going to talk about different types of gerrymandering. But first, I have a question. Who makes the political district maps? For example, if I tuned into CNN, would the political district map be the same as the political district map on Fox? That's a good question. I know that you have different people within the different news agencies that create their maps based on statistics. Usually, man, I hope they're going to be similar. They might be slightly different, but I know that in the cases where I've looked at different media outlets, like for example, when you're looking at election maps or electoral maps, usually they're all going to report the same kind of stuff like during the heat of election because they might get called out by another news agency that might be wrong. In terms of, in case that's not what you're asking, in terms of the people that draw the congressional lines, that takes place every 10 years when the census is done. You see what the populations are going to be within your states. And then the congressional, I guess the party that is in control of the state legislature at that time will be the ones that are going to draw the lines between the borders. So if a Republican legislature is in control in 2020, Republicans are going to be the ones usually that get to draw the congressional lines, which again kind of shows, well, they've got a lot to win by gerrymandering. And so it happens all the time. It's not something that is ancient history. And when you talk about the first case of the gerrymander political cartoon you guys study in maybe 8th grade or definitely going to look at in 11th grade, this stuff still happens. It happens all the time. Josh, I hope I answered your question, man. All right, so here are some examples of gerrymandering. And there are, I think I've got them kind of classified into 3 different areas here: stacking, packing, and cracking. But the picture speaks volumes because you're able to actually see how it works. If you just look at the raw population, like in this map here, you're going to see that there is a majority green. So theoretically, green ought to win in elections and things all the time because there's more of them if you're going by popular vote. In this particular picture here, districts are compact and fair, and you see where you've got 2 purple districts that make up 40% of the population, and then 3 green districts make up 60%, and green wins. But over here, districts may be compact and unfair. Now, this right here is going to kind of be like with South Carolina. These are compact, but you could argue that it's maybe unfair. And the reason is because what you do is you end up packing, and maybe here's a better example for what I'm trying to show you, but you end up packing a lot of like-minded individuals into one district that they're going to win, But then there's so many people within that one particular district that there's not enough in other districts to make a difference in their elections. And so if you look here at this one, for example, this here is almost entirely green. And so green's going to win this district. But by putting so many green people in this one area and then spacing the others out where you got mostly purple, you can see that purple ends up winning even though they make up less of the population. That's how gerrymandering works. It is hard sometimes to look at it and say, well, that's gerrymandering. Oh my gosh, what are you thinking? But it does happen all the time on both sides. To summarize this one real quick, because I need to get into political theories and I'm running out of time fast. You've got cracking, which is when you break apart a different group, like I'd say here's probably the best example of that. Look at where, like I said, you kind of break a group off like this. All right, stacking or packing. Maybe that's a better example of packing. Packing is where you put all like-minded people into one or a few large groups, like we see in South Carolina here. All right, South Carolina is never going to be a Democrat state. Now, to be fair, also there are mostly Republicans in South Carolina. And then stacking is going to be when you dilute a minority group with the majority, which would be mostly probably this one right here. Okay, so there are a bunch of maybe a large minority in each congressional district, but it's they're completely, I guess, covered by the fact that there's a majority in every district, and so green is going to win 100%, when it should probably only win 60%. All right, so redistricting. Here's what I just now saying. I'm going to skip this slide, but what it's talking about is state legislatures are the ones that are going to be drawing the lines, and basically whoever's in charge is going to be the ones doing that.